Welcome to today's shir, Kloloi Shel Davar. This is the general rule. Learn Chumash and my Mishnah Torah. That's all you will need to master the oral law. These are the words of the Rambam in his introduction to Mishnah Torah. And we already had one shir about it, which is an introduction to this. However, we will try to work out that this is independent of the other shir, and you could understand from this shir alone concerning this matter, which seems to be quite shocking, that how is it that we spend our time so much learning Gemara, and yet the Rambam says that all you're going to need is my Mishnah Torah, and that's it. You don't need anything else. Before we begin, I'd like to show you a bit concerning the website. I did update it, and this should be an excellent tool in order to understand the shiurim, the different classes that we have. And the best way to really excel with understanding is starting from the bottom, the oral law, and going up. This is one unit. The bottom one are the oldest shiurim, the oral law, and these go together, part 1 and part 2, the difference between Sfard and Ashkenaz, Torah min hashamayim and Torah loy bashamayim, and the difference of actually viewing the Gemara, what's our approach to learning Gemara, the approach of Ashkenaz, which is Rashi, and the approach of Rambam, which is Sfard. So it's all leading up to this one idea, this one concept is, what about Gemara? What about the learning of Gemara? Kloloi Shel Davar. So, in order to understand this, I'd also like to show you that throughout the different shiurim we'll be giving, so I have some tools here which should really help you out with the understanding. One thing is Encyclopedia for Toldos Gedolei Yisrael. This is the best tool I have seen, and I put it together from the Seforim. I put it together that they're all in one volume. So when you speak of one particular gadol, you could look it up over here. There's no need even to go on Wikipedia, and you could see some background about the Gedolim. In today's shir, we have all these different links. So briefly, let me give you a bit of a background what's going on. Marat Schias, we open this up and it takes us to another link. So the Marat Schias was living in the 1800s, and he was a unique individual that learned, you could say, Kol HaTorah Kula. He really understood the entire Torah, and we're going to be talking about it a bit later. He understood who the Rambam was, not only from his Mishnah Torah, from also Pirush HaMishnayos, from Sefer HaMitzvahs, from Moreh Nevuchim, from all the other Seforim that he wrote also. So he was, at that time, was the beginning, or the foundation era of the Maskilim. And he was able to speak their language, and he understood the danger of the Maskilim. So the Maskilim in those days were quite learned. Here we have Shadal, Shmuel, David, Lutzato, and they had their own agendas. So in a nutshell, what happened was Shmuel, David, Lutzato, he wrote many different Seforim. So one of his complaints was against the Rambam, that the Rambam wanted us to forget learning Gemara. Now, at first I was thinking, well, this is interesting. And so he was basically saying, it's necessary to learn the Gemara, and we have to really neglect the Rambam. We have to stop learning Mishnah Torah, because all Mishnah Torah is telling us what the halach is, without really a good understanding of the source of the halacha, of the Shaklavitaria, Havayista Abaya Verava, going back and forth. So Shadal wrote an article somewhere, and he was complaining about the Rambam. Comes along Tzvi Chius, and what he does was trying to defend the Rambam. What we have back on my website, we have the article from a sefer called a sefer from Harav Meir Hershkovitz. So he explains this, and we went through this last time, that the Maratz Chias wrote a sefer called Tiferes L'Moshe, explaining the Rambam and explaining this this debate. And he gives us a synopsis of the tainus back and forth, or the points that the Maratz Chias was saying in order to defend the Rambam from Shadal. So that's what we have as a link here, and it would be beneficial to take a look at that link. Then we have the actual Tiferes L'Moshe of the Maratz Chias. This is the sefer, and I also marked it up today. We should have different markings. We're going to be going through the actual words of the Maratz Chias and take a look what he says, and also have an understanding what if he is actually correct in his defense of the Rambam. Now, in order, before we even get to this, I want to present to you two things which is extremely important when it comes to history, when it comes to Seforim. Number one is intellectual honesty, meaning that every person has a particular agenda, a particular belief, but when you're looking at things, you have to really set aside everything and look at it objectively. And that's called intellectual honesty. Using your intellect, we have chachma, we have bina, and we have das, and look at things without getting clouded by your own personal belief. So that's what intellectual honesty is. An applied method of problem solving characterized by an unbiased, honest attitude, which can be demonstrated in a number of different ways. You could read for yourself. But the idea is that your personal belief does not interfere with the pursuit of truth. And that's what we're going to be doing today, looking to see, well, the Maratz Chias wrote something, and he wrote in the Sefer Tiferes L'Moshe. Let's take a look at his different points, and we'll be going into the Sefer itself. The other thing is holistic. Holistic means you have to treat something, you have to see the big picture of something. You can't just look at one particular area and based on that come out with a whole conclusion. It's interesting, the Chassam Sofer writes that if you just take things out of context and you're looking at one piece of the puzzle, but not the whole thing, it will come out that it's actually a mitzvah to serve Avodah Zarah. How is that? Because the pasuk says clearly, "Va'avadetem elikim acherim," that you should serve other gods or other people. "Va'avadetem elihim acherim," regardless. So he says it's a mitzvah min Torah. It says clearly. However, the problem is that you're taking things out of context, that there's a word before. The word before is visartem. Hashem is telling us or reprimanding us and saying you should not go after idol worship, because if you do, visartem, va'avadetem elihim acherim, that you're going to be turned away, then the consequences will come. But if you take things out of context, that's one idea. But the other idea is also holistic. When we're talking about the Rambam, people, especially Lubavitchers, for example, they know Mishnah Torah. Why? Because there's a mitzvah to learn Mishnah Torah, 3 prakim a day, 1 parak a day, and that's what they know. But who wrote Mishnah Torah? Mishnah Torah was written by the Rambam. So the idea is to really have an understanding on all the works of the Rambam in order, and who the Rambam was as a person, in order to really understand, did the Rambam want us not to learn Gemara or not? To understand this very sensitive topic. So what we're going to do today is go through, I'll just give you a preview, to go through Tiferes L'Moshe, see what the Maascavitz has to say about it. That's number one. And then we're going to argue on the Maascavitz and see that looking at the Rambam based on the other shiurim that we gave until now, perhaps there's a different view. And perhaps the Rambam didn't want us to spend all our time learning Gemara. But if that's the case, then we have a question. Okay, so you're not going to learn Gemara. You're going to learn, let's say, Mishnah Torah. Let's say you're going to learn Pirush HaMishnayos of the Rambam, the commentary to the Mishnah, which he spent 10 years writing. So let's say a person's going to spend time doing that. But how much time could you spend already? If you do Pirush HaMishnayos, which is okay, I mean, it's possible to go through in a short amount of time. Within a couple years, you could be fluent in it. And within a couple years, you could be fluent on Mishnah Torah. When we say Mishnah Torah, we're talking about the Mishnah Torah the way the Rambam wrote Mishnah Torah. The Rambam did not write Mishnah Torah with all the Mefarshim, because the Mefarshim weren't around yet. The Rambam didn't have that in mind, that he needed Mefarshim. The Rambam wrote it that it should be independent, self-sufficient. So if that's the case, let's say the Rambam says, okay, you're not supposed to spend time learning Gemara, so what are you going to spend your time with? And that's what we're going to go through in this year. And number one, I want to stress, I want to underline how important it is not to take my words for face value. And that's why we have the different sources over here. Number two, argue on what I say. But here, after much thought and writing writing Hamavei L'Sifrei HaRambam, so the bottom line is that we have to really understand what's going on over here. Feel free to disagree. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with Tiferes L'Moshe. And you have access to that also on shazak.com, Seforim, Vesofrim. So we're going to go through this point by point, but actually we're going to do something interesting. We are going to start, we're going to close other tabs to the right. We're going to start with Perek Shlishi. So here we have his Sefer, Tiferes L'Moshe, Tzvi Shchias, and we have several chapters here, and we're going to start with, this is Perek Rishon. As you can see, I highlighted different points. We'll be talking about that. But what we're going to actually do is start with Perek Shlishi, or Perek Sheni rather, and we're going to go through his refutation of Shadal. And once we talk about that, and I explain to you the differences that where I'm coming from, then we're going to understand better how to approach Perek Rishon. So that's what we're going to do. So Shadal wrote that Chas v'Shalom. Let's just start over here 1 second. Bear with me. So Shadal wrote in his letter, he writes that if not for the Rambam, this is the beginning of what Shadal is writing. V'zel l'shoinai v'molei arayvet sh'amad negdoi v'godar beferetz kfar nishkechu v'nevdu ha'mishnah v'talmud. So Shadal's concern, Shmuel David Letzato's concern is that if not for the Ravid, that the Ravid came ahead and was arguing and schlepping us back into the Gemara, we would have forgotten the Mishnah and Talmud. Basically what the Ravid does, we know what it looks like. Here is a picture. We're going to go into Rambam. We're going to go into Sefer. We'll go over here into, let's say, Hilchos Yisodei HaTorah. And let's take a look. We'll see the Ravid somewhere. Hilchos. Well, the Ravid doesn't show up that much on these places, but for sure in Hilchos Talmud Torah. Come on, Ravid. So here we have Hasagas HaRavid. So the Ravid comes along. Here we have again. So the Rambam is taking us back into the Gemara. And it's interesting because it was printed, the Ravid was printed within the text of the Rambam himself, as if it's one thing. So the printers who did that actually had in mind to, let's say, placate people and tell people, you know what? It is important, Gemara. The Rambam didn't want to write any sources over here, but the Ravid is taking us back into the Gemara. So the Ravid constantly quotes the Gemara. Avram Aimer Ze'ena Machver. It's not really glottic. It's not really good. So he's taking us back that we have no choice in order to learn the Gemara. So back over here. So this is the very, very strong words of the Shadal, that if not for the Ravid, Kvar nishkechu v'nevdu ha-mishnah v'ha-talmud v'arei anu v'neinu mishubadam ayinu laharambam ula-aristai, referring to Aristotle. So if not that the Ravid came along and schlepped us back into the Gemara, we would still be, so to say, slaves to the Rambam, and the Rambam represents not only in Moreh Nevuchim, but also in the first 4 prakim of Mishnah Torah. He represents his connection to Aristotle, which is, according to Shadal, something which should not be introduced in Judaism. So that is in starting Perek Rishon. But I said I'm going to go further to Perek Sheni, because here in Perek Sheni we're going to concentrate on what the Shadal said in order to answer what the Maratz Chia said in order to answer Shadal, and we'll be looking this up in Mishnah Torah. So let me bring up the Bar Ilan. Perhaps that search will go easier. So we're gonna search right now. We'll do a search. We're going to search right now, not all databases, but let's pick the database, which is, we're going to restart it, and we're going to pick the Rambam. Here we have the Rambam, and we'll just use the Rambam himself without, we could use also the Mefarshim of the Rambam, and we'll type in here Abaya V'Rava. And here we go. So what we have here is what we have over here is Abaya. Okay, we have here in Halacha Yud Gimel that it talks. So this is what the Maratz Chia says. How could you say that the Rambam is telling us that he wants us not to learn Gemara, as he says in an introduction, that all you need is my Sefer and you don't need anything else when it comes to halacha? This is what the Rambam is saying, when the Rambam clearly talks about inyane arba prakim elu b'chomesh mitzvahs ha'elu. This is what the Chachamim call pardes, k'moshe amru arba nichnas nu pardes. And this, in other words, the first 4 prakim of Mishnah Torah talks about things which the Rambam later wrote about in Moreh Nevuchim, and a lot of Moreh Nevuchim, as the Rambam himself says, is based on not everything, but it's based a lot on Aristotle. Now, our view of that is, well, the things that Aristotle wrote, which the Rambam says is Torah, so actually Aristotle took it from Chachamim beforehand, from Chachmei Yisrael, and it was forgotten about. So therefore, when the Rambam is referring to Aristotle, it's not he's referring to a guy, he's referring to a Jew, and that guy wrote down what the Chachmei Yisrael said. So, when you look into Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, these are the foundations of the Torah. So the Rambam is telling us at the end of Perek Daled, he says, this is what the Chachamim call our Nichnesu Lepardes. This is a Gemara in Chagiga, and I assume you know a lot about these things. I don't have to go start from scratch with that. But these are Ba Nichnesu Lepardes, and not everyone came out of that okay. In other words, the Rambam is telling us you should know the first 4 prakim of Mishnah Torah is a dangerous area. That's why I'm only writing it bekitzer, the first 4 prakim. I'm only writing it briefly. However, this is something which you would call a davar gadol. As the Chachamim say, davar gadol, ma'aseh merkava, and Maisa Bereshis is also what the Rambam was saying beforehand. This is something which is so very, very important. However, the other things which we say, I think it's pronounced Havayus Da'abaya Verava. I looked up Rambam La'am that has Nekudis, so that's how you have the Nekudis. Havayis Da'abaya Verava. Havayis Da'abaya Verava means the Shakla V'Tarya, going back and forth and back and forth. Abaya says this, and Rava argues with him. It's not the bottom line. It's the Shakla V'Tarya. So the Rambam is telling us you should know what's the Davar Gadol, the first 4 prakim that I'm talking to you about. Maisa Merkava and Maisa Bereshis. And that is Moreh Nevuchim. That's what it is. I'm soon going to tell you something very interesting about that. So the Rambam says, so even though Davar Katan is Havayis Da'abaya Verava, and Davar Gadol is Maisa Merkava, so perhaps I should spend my time in Mishnah Torah just talking about Maisa Merkava. So the Rambam says, no. Afal Pikein, Re'uyin Hein Laktima. This is a prerequisite. You really need to learn Havayis Da'abaya Verava. Where are you going to get Havayis Da'abaya Verava? You're going to get it from Gemara. So the Rambam tells us here that you really have to have that yesod, that foundation beforehand. You can't go straight into Maisa Merkava. Now let's think about what Maisa Merkava is in our own heads. At the time of the Rambam, there was no Kabbalah around, no Sifrei Kabbalah around, only for Yechidei Skula. And it's questionable whether the Rambam himself had access to that or not, or was involved in Sifrei Kabbalah. But take, for example, that basically Maisa Merkava, Maisa Bereshis is learning about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what it's all about. You could call it philosophy if you want, you could call it Chassidus, you could call it Kabbalah, but what is the stress? It's learning about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Rambam is telling us that Davar Gadol is what I started off, Hilchis Yesodei HaTorah. Yesodei HaTorah means the foundation of all foundations. Yesodei Yesodis Vamud HaChochmas Leida Sheyesh Sham Matzui Rishain. That's what is important. Sheyesh Sham Matzui Rishain. So, and that's what he's calling Yesodei HaTorah. It's no question that the Rambam held that this was extremely important. That's how he starts off. That's the name that he gives. Hilchis Yesodei HaTorah. These are the foundations of the Torah. So if that's the case, after you're learning the first 4 prakim, you're going to think to yourself, if that's the case, I do expect that the Rambam is going to continue and teach us Maisa Merkava, since that's a Davar Gadol. So the Rambam says no. You have to have that introduction beforehand for a couple reasons. That first of all, they settle a person's knowledge first. You can't jump straight into it. Oh, let me go back to what I was saying before. Like, you never introduce someone to Yiddishkeit, you should not, and give him deep inyanim in Kabbalah. You can give him some simple things in Kabbalah, but never deep inyanim in Kabbalah, to such an extent that there was also from Chazal, from the Chachamim, they made certain Gederis, they made certain Takanas. You can't learn Kabbalah until you're 40 years old. You have to first learn Gemara. You have to have a deep understanding in certain things. So that's what the Rambam says. You have to start off with the Shakla V'Tarya of Gemara. V'oid shehem ha'toiva ha'gdoila she'ishpia ha'kadosh baruch hu liyishuv ha'olam hazeh k'dei linchol chaye ha'olam haba. V'efsher sheyadam ha'kol katan v'gadol ish v'isha ba'al lev racha v'ba'al lev katzer. It's something you need to have in order that you should, you know what, I'm going to try to explain it. Actually, I'm not even going to try to explain it because I really don't understand it. So I'm going to be intellectually honest, and I'm going to tell you I don't really understand the second thing that he says. The first thing I understand, at least I think I understand, I do not understand the next part of that. If someone could let me know, info@shazak.com. And it's really not something you're going to look into the Mefarshim of the Rambam for an explanation, because basically the Mefarshim of the Rambam, they run away from the first four prakim of Mishnah Torah. I'm going to show you something pretty interesting, that if you go over here to the beginning, you'll see how that's set up in the first four prakim, Hilchos Yisodei HaTorah. Who are the Mefarshim? We don't even know. It's someone called Pirush. You don't have the Magid Mishnah over here. You don't have the Kesef Mishnah over here like you're going to have later. The Kesef Mishnah, and you're going to have the Magid Mishnah. Well, the Kesef Mishnah. You don't have these different Mefarshim in the Lechem Mishnah, and you don't have them over there. The reason is simple, a couple reasons. But it's not something that you do have, the first one, you do have the Kesef Mishnah, by the way. But afterwards, it's only Pirush. Whoever wrote that. Actually, I do know who wrote it, but it's not a topic for right now. So let's get back over here. So that's what the Rambam says. So what the Maratz Chias is doing, and that's what we're starting with, is his proof that the Rambam didn't want us to neglect Gemara is from here. Okay, so let's start over here, and we're going to talk about how I differ from the outlook of the Maratz Chias, and then we're going to go back to his proofs, his refutations of Shadal, one by one. But I did tell you, I'm going to tell you something very interesting over here. Why is this such why is this such an important topic that we're talking about? It's so important. The Rambam says in the beginning of Mishnah Torah, all you need is my halacha sefer, and that's it. You don't need anything more regarding halacha. You don't need anything more. If that's the case, if we really don't know Gemara, what's happening in our schools? What's happening in our own personal life? And we always have this conflict. Should we spend so much time learning Gemara? People spend time after their marriage, 10 years in the kollel, 20 years in the kollel. What are they doing? They're learning Gemara. This is Daf Yomi and everything. So it would shake us to the core when there is a person like the Rambam, and the Rambam says, you know what, it's not important. Learn halacha and that's it. So that's really why it's important. I want to share with you something interesting, that there was a great Rosh Hashiva who passed away, I think, in the 1980s, Rabbi Yaakov Ruderman. And he lived in Toronto. He was a Rosh Hashiva in Torah Vodas in New York. And he would go, at times during the winter, he would go to Florida, like many people did, to rest up. There in Florida, Rabbi Leibel Shapiro, the Rosh Hashiva of the Lubavitch Yeshiva in Florida, they would have discussions. So it was that time the Rebbe started the learning of Mishnah Torah, that we should learn it on a regular basis. And Rabbi Ruderman says, you know what? I don't know exactly how the discussion went. And says, you know what? The first 4 prakim of Mishnah Torah, it's not really Torah. Meaning, what is he saying? He's saying, well, it's based on Moreh Nevuchim, based on Greek philosophy. How could you really call that Torah? And so Rabbi Shapiro answered him, interesting you're saying that, because he starts off with this, and he calls it Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. These are the foundations of the Torah. So how can you not call it Torah? Now, that's one interesting point over here. But it's interesting because if you do call it Torah, and you do respect the Rambam, we do respect the Rambam. Like every Rosh Hashiva respects the Rambam in a certain way. What do? They take something it says in Mishnah Torah, and for that they start to pilpul. I'm not sure how much they respect. They don't really respect the Rambam's wishes, because the Rambam wanted us to learn it from beginning to end. But they do. Who cannot respect the Rambam? They go into every single word that he says. They try to compare it to what it says in the Gemara. They're trying to come out and to see how Rambam understands the halacha from the Gemara, even though the Gemara doesn't say clearly exactly what the psak din is. So they do respect the Rambam. But if you respect the Rambam, it seems pretty clear that the Rambam is neglecting or is not so happy that we should spend so much time learning the Shakla V'Tarya of Gemara. The other interesting thing that I wanted to tell you is when I speak to people, and we have my Sefer, Hamavei L'Sifrei HaRambam, so I talk about the Rambam. Here you have the Sefer, Hamavei L'Sifrei HaRambam, so I should know a thing or two about the Rambam. And I tell you this, could tell people this idea that the first 4 prakim are based on Moreh Nevuchim. They say, what are you talking about? It's Kabbalah. It's Kabbalah. So why do they say it's Kabbalah? Because they don't understand it. Well, if you don't understand something, so probably it's Kabbalah. But that's not really the definition of Kabbalah. It's definitely. So my response is, look into the Franco Rambam. You'll see on the side, Moreh Nevuchim, that all these different concepts over here are written in Moreh Nevuchim. We know that Moreh Nevuchim is based on philosophy. So whether you call it Greek philosophy, like I said before. However, this past Shabbos, I took out Igris of the Rebbe, and the first letter, the first letter that we have that the Rebbe wrote in 1920 was to the Rogachover. And it's an extremely interesting letter. And he mentions over there, and we know that Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah was based on Aristotle. So there you have it. In the letter of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, when he was, I think, around 26 years old, and a fascinating letter to the Rogachover. Too bad I don't think we have the response of the Rogachover. But there he says clearly that Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah was based on Greek philosophy. So getting back to this. So, this is the proof that Tzvi Hirschchias writes that, what are you telling me that the Rambam wanted to neglect the learning of Gemara, where he says clearly, here, Ad Koi Dibarna B'Rais Min Chitzas Limud Gemara, the Sefer Mishnah Torah. We're going to get to that soon. Va'ata Erecha, I'm going to show you Loi Levad Shaloi Ratza Lashkiach Es HaMishnah VaTalmud. Not only didn't he want us to forget the Mishnah and Talmud, Rakito Aleinu L'Chayva Es Limud Gemara. He wanted us specifically that we must learn Gemara. V'zel L'Shani Seif Perek Dal Milchos Yesodei HaTorah. Afal pisha davar katan koroi sam chacham shamar davar katan avayis dabai v'rava. Afal pikein reuyin lakdiman, as we said before, we saw in Mishnah Torah. Vavayis eina halachas psukis b'sefer Mishnah Torah shalai rak inyan apilpol maso matan shalalacha. So if the Rambam says that we need to have it, so of course we need to have it. The Rambam says clearly, Ra'inu ladas Rambam okay, so that's one thing that he answers. Now comes my difference, that my understanding, and what the Maratz Chias is saying. So the Maratz Chias brings, rightfully so, that the Rambam says it's a necessity. We really need to have the Shakla Vitaria. My response to that is, okay, the Rambam says it's a necessity, we need to have it, but the Rambam clearly brings down the citing from the Gemara that the Chachamim call it the Davar Katan. He's saying that it is a small thing to such an extent. If you look into the Mefarshim, the Ran says, Rabbeinu Nissim says, halavai, that the Rambam didn't write it. Rabbeinu Nissim was really upset at the fact that he wrote those words. So he says, halavai, the Rambam didn't write it. So, what I'd like to say over here is based actually on a shir that we gave beforehand. The shir was the oral law and Torah min hashamayim. Let's go into Torah min hashamayim. So in that shir, we talked about Moshe Rabbeinu being up in Shamayim for 40 days. The question is, how could he learn everything in 40 days? If it's al pi derech hateva, so it would take years. If it's lamayla mi derech hateva, it should be in him. He could have learned everything in 1 minute. So the idea was, of course, it was derech hateva. But according to the Shalah, according to the Medrash, rather, it says clearly that he learned the klolim. This is what he learned. He learned the klolim on Har Sinai, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and based on those klolim, the klal uprat, prat klal, the kal v'chaymer, all the different klolim that are involved in learning, he was able to take that and apply it to any situation back here. So, what the Rambam is saying here is, in my opinion, what he's saying, Avayis Dabaya V'Rava, is says this is a prerequisite. Of course, I'm not telling you that you have to burn the Gemara. Go through the Gemara, but go through the Gemara in a way that you will focus on the halacha, not the process, rather the actual halacha. And also learn Gemara. You don't even have to learn all of it, but learn Gemara. When you're learning Gemara, do it in a way that you're going to start to understand what's the process of coming to the halacha, because it will come. The Rambam understood that his idea, that his Gemara learning, the Rambam understood clearly that this is going to be a culmination of an era that you're going to be able to extract the halakha, but he also understood that there will be situations in the future that you're going to need to paskin the halakha, and it's not going to be written in Mishnah Torah like we're seeing right now. We have different technology advances and different shilas that come up. We're in the corona situation. So how are you going to be able to paskin the halacha if you don't know the process? So therefore, what the Rambam is saying is learning Gemara is good for the Hakdama, just like Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai had 40 days and 40 nights in order to learn the Klalim. The same thing also with Gemara. You should get to understand have a closeness, understand Abaye and Rava back and forth. You should understand how it works, and then you don't have to spend all your time fetching into every single shakla v'tarya. You have my sefer. You're not going to need any other sefer when it comes to halacha, but you will definitely need to have at least an introduction to that in Gemara. You're going to need to have that development. For example, I'll give you another example. There's something called shimush. Let's say somebody wants to be a practicing rabbi. He wants to know how to answer shilas. So you could be learning as many shilas Teshuvah Seforim as you want. You still are not going to be capable. You need to see how it works in practicality. So the way that it used to work, and I assume it's working also like that today, is you hang around a practicing Rav and you see how they deal with the questions. Not everything is clear cut. There's a lot of variables. It depends who's asking the question. You need to have that shimush. So how long does that shimush last? There's no clear cut thing. It could last a year. It could last 2 years. How long do you spend by them? You don't need everything. So this is my idea, at least, that the Rambam is approach to Mishnah Torah. You really need it to get the Yesodus, to get the foundation, but you need every single thing? He says, no. It's important to spend your time with something else. We'll soon, towards the end of this year, we're going to get to the answer. So what are you going to spend your time with? But now, what we like to see over here is another point that everyone brings up. Chayiv Adam l'shalom Talmudai shlish b'Torah shebiksav. We're just going to go through that briefly. That other point that he brought up, and let's see if we can find it here in the search. Chayiv Adam. Let's see if we have that. Chayiv Adam. Let's go back over here. Chayiv Adam l'shalesh. Let me add that word in the search. Chayiv Adam l'shalesh. Let's just go over here. Shlish. Okay. It's going to be anyways, it says over Chayiv Adam l'shalesh shamesh Talmudai. Shlish b'Torah shebiksav, Hilchas Talmud Torah, Halacha Yud Aleph, and Halacha Yud Beis, that we have it over there. So we can go to that. Basically, you could even look it up yourself over there, that when everyone brings this down saying, for sure the Rambam wanted us to spend a third of our time learning Gemara. Hold on a second. Okay, just figured out how to use the pause button, so I'm back over here. We did find it. Chayiv l'shalish zman limidasai, his learning. Shlish b'Torah shebiksav, shlish b'Torah shebal peh, u'shlish yavin v'yaskel achris davar merishisai v'yotzi davar midavar v'yadam et davar l'davar v'yavin b'midas sha'atayra nidreshes behem at sheyeda heichu ikar amidas v'heich yotze iser v'amutter. So what they do is, the Rambam says clearly over here, what is his definition of Gemara? His definition of Gemara is exactly like we said beforehand, that a person has to understand the klalim, how to compare one thing to the other. Did the Rambam want that we should neglect it completely? Of course not. Now, another point. Divrei Kabbalah bichlal Torah shebiksav heinu pirish bal pev yonim anikroim pardes bichlal hagemara hein. So what's pardes? So the Rambam says clearly here that I want you to spend time with pardes. In other words, Dover Katan Havayas Dabaya Virava, begin with this, get your Yesodus in order. You should understand the process, how to derive it, a halacha that's not written in Mishnah Torah. But what do I want you to spend your time with? Pardes. So I'm giving it away already towards the towards the end of this year, I'm going to say. So if that's the case, what are we supposed to be spending our time? Exactly what the Rambam writes here in Mishnah Torah, what his definition of Gemara is. Interesting, the Alter Rebbe, when he writes in his Hilchos Talmud Torah, so his definition of the Pardes is more like Chassidus. You learn Chassidus, everyone according to their own world. So back over here, Maratz Chia says, "Ubi yoser mizeh kosa perik aleph Hilchos Talmud Torah chayvan mashal shomu shlish b'Torah shebiksav," and he says the other things. So let's go back to Perik Beis, and we're going to do it quickly because you have all the resources. You have all the resources on my website. You have this is a kitzer of the Machlekes with Shadal. You want to know about it? Here's a Maratz Chias, and we're going to get to these two other things shortly. And I'm going to try to hurry things up right now. Anyways, so now we're going to go back to Perik Rishon. Now that we understand that, now I'm going to look to see the words of the Maratz Chias, and I'm going to put in my 2 cents for everything. Hine matik divrei atoyin. The toyin is shadal. Lahares kichishav liachas leisor azar sashem elam le'alu alavavai. So number 1. V'moli haravid. This is the taina of the shadal. So this person thought incorrectly that the Rambam wants us to neglect Gemara. So now he's going to go proof by proof answering that. Now, so he starts off, he begins one of his beginning refutations. He says, well, what are you talking about? The Rambam wrote Mishnah Torah. Now let me bring up Hamavei L'Sifrei HaRambam, and we're going to talk about the Pirush HaMishnayos. So in Pirush HaMishnayos, in his Akdama for Pirush HaMishnayos, so he writes over here. Oh, okay. So we have over here the 4 things. Actually, I don't think I'm going to go into it, but you can have online and you could look up over here. So the Rambam writes in his introduction to Pirush HaMishnayos. If I keep on going like this, the shir is going to take 3 hours. So I really want to condense it over here. But we spoke about last time also that the Rambam writes that there are 4 ta'elis, 4 benefits from his Pirush HaMishnayos. Just in brief, the Rambam first wrote Pirush HaMishnayos when he was in his 30s or 20s. It took him 10 years to do. Then he wrote Mishnah Torah. And then he wrote, in his later years, he wrote Mar Nevuchim. Then before Mishnah Torah, he wrote Seforim Mitzvahs. It took him 1 year to do. So in his introduction to Pirush HaMishnayos, he writes that there are 4 benefits. Well, one benefit is to get the halacha. Now, this is really, really important because I'll sum it up in a couple sentences. The Rambam says it's important to learn Shakla V'Tarya, that's the Akdama, fine. But as a Sfardi, what is his priority? Get to the halacha. So that's the difference in the previous shiurim we had between Ashkenaz and Sfard. Ashkenaz was interested in the process of the halacha, and that's what Kadosh Baruch Hu wants. Even if you get a different conclusion as somebody else, it's not important. It's the process. It's that you're into the whole learning. This is what's important. According to the Rambam, no, we have to get the correct halacha. Authority is important. So that is the goal. So number 1, in Pirush HaMishnayos, the goal is to get the halacha. But it also helps as an introduction to Gemara and a review after you learned the Gemara already. So here the Maratz Chia says, well, didn't he tell you that it's an introduction for Gemara? So obviously Gemara is important. So here's the point. The point is the Rambam is not telling us that Gemara is not important. The Rambam wants us perhaps to go through the entire Gemara, not focus on the Shakla V'Tarya. He wants us to look at the Gemara and see how do you get to the halacha, at least. he wants us to know the stories of the Gemara. So another point was, so his point here is, if he wants us, if the Rambam would have wanted us to just neglect the entire Gemara, so why did he spend his time writing the Pirush HaMishnayos? He spent 10 years writing it. So according to the Tayin, what's that all about? Obviously, because Gemara, Mishnah is together with Gemara, and the Rambam explains the Mishnah in his Pirush HaMishnayos, so obviously, and he's writing that it's a benefit to learn Gemara, so obviously Gemara is important. No. What's important is the halacha. If you look into the life of the Rambam and see what the Rambam wrote, as we explained in previous shiurim, every single work that the Rambam wrote was getting to the halacha. And let me actually start talking about that now. Let's go into the shir, and that's what I started the shir saying. Let's be intellectually honest, and let's have a holistic approach, looking at the works of the Rambam. Zichru Teiras Moshe is Perek Revi of my Sefer, and let's take a look to see the works of the Rambam. So, you know what? I don't really have to go so much inside every single point. You have it highlighted, you have it on the website, and I would encourage you to look at it. Look at the share, my share first, and then you'll have a better understanding. So, let me, just looking at the pictures, let's take a look and see what I could do over here. So number one, Maratz Chia says that at the beginning of his life, the Rambam wrote a Pirush on Gemara. And look into the Sefer, you'll see all the different quotes that we have. Indeed, we have a few things, a Pirush of the Gemara. So if the Rambam thought it wasn't important, the Maratz Chia says, so why is he writing explanation on Gemara? We have a Maseches Rosh Hashanah. And we know that the Rambam wrote in different places that he wrote on other places. So the answer to that is simple. The Rambam is not excluding Gemara. Number one, the Rambam wrote this when he was younger. But number two, open up the Pirush Rambam. Take a look. Now, what do you expect the Rambam to be writing? If you attended Shiurim from Rosh Yeshivas, you would expect that he's going deep into the Shakla Vitaria of the Gemara, deep into the explanations, Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, a Chakira here and there, and back and forth. But I'm going to tell you honestly, you're going to be disappointed, because the Rambam, in his explanations of Gemara, and he writes which Gemaras did he pick to write about. Let's take a look over here. Which Gemaras did the Rambam choose to write about? The Rambam chose, here we go, V'chibarti pirushim al shloisha starim moyed noshim nizikim. Chutz me'arba mesach shani shana atak libin amasha v'ter matzasi p'nai l'kach. Gam pirashi es meseches chulin l'goydol atzayrech la v'zeu iski shasakti bayim limed kol masha l'madati. So what do you see from here? The Rambam is writing those things which are pertinent, which are more halacha l'maisa. As he says over here, I wrote Meseches Chulin l'goydol atzarech la because it's kashrus, it's in your name of kashrus. So you have to know it. So this is when the Rambam was younger. So what was he writing? He was writing a commentary on the Gemara, which is necessary. You have to remember, in those times, he didn't have Mishnah Torah yet. So when he was younger, he decided, okay, I have Gemara. Let me write a Pirush on Gemara. I'm not going to go into all the Chakiras and everything like that. I'm not going to be giving a shir in that. I'm going to write simple. I'm going to get the halacha from the Gemara. However, he also writes these important words. V'tera matzasi pnai lekach. I didn't find time for that. Why didn't he find time? So there is someone, Rav Shaul Lieberman, who wrote something so interesting, I'll never forget it. And he says, well, the Rambam found time with whatever he wanted to find time. If he wanted to continue to write a Pirush, his Pirushim on Gemara, he would have finished it if he wanted to. But he changed his priorities, and he changed his line of thinking. So before, in the beginning, it was Gemara. Then he said, you know what, maybe it's a better idea to write on the Mishnah, and I'll get halacha. When he's writing Pirush HaMishnayos, at one point, I don't know where, I have no indication, he decided, well, I got the halacha. What is Pirush HaMishnayos? Pirush HaMishnayos is not going into the Gemara and bringing a whole pilpul into the Gemara. He neglects, he disregards. He doesn't look at the Shakla V'Tarya of the Gemara and Pirush HaMishnayos. What is he trying to do? He's trying to extract it and get the halacha from that and give you some background of the Mishnah itself. So that's the answer. The answer is, okay, he wrote a Pirush on Gemara. That doesn't prove anything. That just proves the point that we said before, that the Rambam wanted us to look at Gemara and have a cursory understanding in the entire Gemara. You're going to have names of people. You're going to have Maisis over there. You're going to have history from Gemara. You're going to have everything like that. Get a deep foundation how you come to a Psak Din, but don't waste your time and spend your time learning Mishnah Torah. You're going to know the halacha and spend your time. What are you going to do with the rest of the time? Pardes. Learn about the Eibishter. That's what you should be doing. I'm going to go further. So if you look into the Sefer over here, you'll see the different Mesechtes that he's choosing, but it's not Menachos and it's not Kodshim. These are the different things. The Chida says, the Rambam Chiber Pirush al Gemara Tlas Sidrin V'chulin K'ma Shekatsav B'Yakdamasei. This is he's writing in his introduction to Pirush HaMishnayos. V'nachi Teilas Bali Yadei Pirush Rosh Hashanah Ksav Yad La Rambam. That's how we have it. Okay, so that was back to that. This is the holistic approach. This is looking at the Rambam as an important person. If you go into my Sefer, though, you're going to see that the Rambam writes in Mishnah Torah, there is Te'eles HaChamishis. There is a fifth benefit for his commentary to the Mishnah. And those are the words that the Rambam says that it's more important to me, Yesaides in Amunah, in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, than anything else in the world. These are the words of the Rambam. You'll look in the Sefer, you'll find that here we have, when the Rambam is writing his Yud Gimel Ikarim, Ukfar erachti b'dvarim ma'od v'yetzasi me'inyan chiburi ela shasisi kein lefisha re'isi shazet ta'eles ba'amuna, that he's writing the Yud Gimel Ikarim. So he says constantly, if you look into Pirush HaMishnayos, something that perhaps you're not aware of, you're going to see that is what's so important. Ki choshev etzli lahasber yesoid mea yesoides yoiser mikol davar acher shani melamed. Where does he say it? In Pirush HaMishnayos Brachas Perek Tes Mishnah Zayin. This is what's important to the Rambam. This is what he's saying to spend the time with. Now we're going back to the different Seforim that the Rambam wrote, and we'll see that it's all focused on one idea, and that is to get to the halacha. So we have Pirush HaMishnayos, where we see what's important to him is Amunah. He doesn't go into the Avayis Tabaya V'Rava. He doesn't do that. And then we have Sefer HaMitzvahs, which is a 613 mitzvahs. But we also have Hilchos Yerushalmi. So he wrote on the Yerushalmi, Pirush ala Rif. That's important. Well, what's the Rif? The Rif is telling you is taking away the Shakla V'Tarya of the Gemara and it's getting straight to halacha. So that's what the Rambam wrote. Why was it important? He's writing a pirush on the Rif. The Rif is halacha. He says that actually in one letter he says he agrees on everything that the Rif says when it comes to halacha. Let's say he has 10,000 piskei halacha. He agrees on everything besides in one letter he writes 10 things. In another letter he writes 30 things. Pirush HaMishnayos Sefer HaMitzvahs. This is what he was focused on his entire life. This is the holistic approach. This is understanding the Rambam. With this we could understand so many things, and quickly I'll go through the different tainas, and we're going to talk about these briefly. So he says, well, Pirush HaMishnayos he wrote. Well, as we mentioned before, that's really not a proof to anything, because the Pirush HaMishnayos is basically, let's get the halacha. So how come another thing he says, how come he didn't say to burn it? And when you have the letter that the Rambam wrote to, so another thing he also says over here is that the Rambam says, Arboim nichnesu lepardes. So Maratzki says, Umi hema elu arba, Tanaim amarayim, ivrim nachrim, ulai malachim, maybe they're malachim. So the answer to that is simple. The Maratzchias is saying that that the Rambam is saying to neglect Gemara entirely. What I'm saying is no. The Rambam says focus on what's important in Gemara. And the Rambam says what's important is Yesodis, understand the process. Just like you have Shimush HaRabbanim, you're by the Rav for a year, for 2 years, understand the process, how you get the halacha and everything. And once you finish with that, you don't need to go into every single detail of Gemara. So that's the answer. So he goes on and he continues. So if that's the case, we find also throughout the Mishnah Torah that the Rambam does mention different names of people. So if you don't learn Gemara, how are you supposed to know who they are? So let's hear. So he starts to say all different names of people. Amar al Rav, Talmud, it's a mistake. Amar al Rav, Talmud, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, referring to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Shaloi Sach Sicha B'Tela Miyanmav. So what's his proof? His proof is, well, he mentioned Rav, who is a Talmud of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, but if you don't learn Gemara, you don't know who Rav is and you don't know who Rabbeinu HaKadosh is. I don't understand the proof of anything over here. Number one, if the Rambam is telling us a story, how do you tell a story without mentioning a name? So even though at the beginning of Mishnah Torah, the Rambam says, I'm not going to write any names, but of course when it comes to stories, you say a name. And the fact that it's mentioned in the Gemara, Rav, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, once again, the Rambam is not telling you to neglect Gemara. Learn Gemara. Learn it like the Rif learned the Gemara. So the Rif writes these different things also. Often the Rif would write these different things when he feels it's important and has to do with halacha. Amar al Rav, Talmud Rabbeinu Shaloi Halach Arba Amas. So there's nothing that there's no proof of anything over here. Al kapanim ana nachapes acher elu atanaim v'amarayim. If we never learn Gemara, well, learn Gemara. It's okay, but learn Gemara according to the Rambam. Focus on that. The Rambam writes in his introduction. Let's go back to the Rambam's introduction. We're going to go back over there and let's take a look at the words of the Rambam in his introduction. So we're going to do something else since I'm here already. So he says, so I'm here already, so let's go into that. Number one, look carefully. Okay. Lefikach, all these different things. He constantly is focusing on the halachas and the tshuvas shechibra ga'onim. Everything he's writing over here, and for sure the Gemara itself is difficult. Therefore, ni'arti chotznei Moshe ben Maimon Asfardi. What he's doing is Nishtanti al atzur b'chol isil chaber dvar ma'mismam v'kol elo chabor be'inyan ha'aser v'amuter v'atamei v'atayra im shar dinei Torah. Lefikach, keep on reading that. Lefikach karasi shem chibur zeh Mishnah Torah. Lefi she'adam karer b'Torah shebiksav tchila v'achar kach karer b'zeh v'yedea mimenu Torah shebibal peh kula v'eina tzarech likroi sefer achar b'neim. He doesn't need to read any other sefer. So this is the point of contention. And we did speak about the Ravid, and we spoke about the Kesef Mishnah in the previous Shiurim. So basically, go over to your Rosh Hashiva, ask him what's going on here. The answer is going to be, well, he meant only in halacha. That's going to be the answer. I could say pretty confidently that that's going to be the answer. The Rambam really didn't mean to neglect Gemara. He's only talking about halacha. So what I like to say is, but that's what was important to the Rambam halacha. This is what is important, not the Havayis, the Abaye V'Rava. He says Davar Katan. That's not the idea of the Sefer. The idea of the Sefer is to get to the Halakha. So when the Rambam says you don't need any other Sefer besides for mine, when it comes to Halakha, true, that's what was important to the Rambam. Another point also, if you look into here, and once again, I have to decide, should I do it another hour or not? That I'm not going to continue. I'll just give you the tools over here. But another point is that the Rambam is talking about, in his introduction, he talks about the different tkufis, the different things. You have the Tanaim, you have the Amoraim, after the Gemara, and he's talking about the Ga'onim. But there is something extremely, extremely important to know, and that is that the Rambam talks about the tkufa of the Ga'onim, and he says, if you look over here, in the Ga'onim in general, we think about the Ga'onim, that they're the ones from Bavel. They are the Ga'onim from Bavel. But look over here what the Rambam says. V'chol elu ha-Ga'onim she'amdu be'eretz Yisrael be'eretz Shinar be'Sfard u'be'Tzarfas. Eretz Shinar and Sfard. Sfard is Spain. Tzarfas could be France or Germany. What is he bringing over here? The Ga'onim over in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Shinar is Bavel. Don't we know Narda, Pupandisa, that's in... So we have a very, very interesting article. Let's go back on the website. We have a very interesting article from, and this is on the website, from Rav Shlomo Zalman Havlin. And I was fascinated by this article, and I'm giving you this article also. And Rav Shlomo Zalman Havlin, and I also marked it up over here. So basically he's saying that the Rambam is Saif Ga'onis. Usually it's a Kufa of Ga'onim, we say finishes Rav Hai Ga'on around the year 1000. But according to him, which I think is 100% correct, according to him, the Rambam himself was Messiah, the Tkufa of the Ga'onim. And that's pretty clear from the words that the Rambam says in his introduction. You have here this entire article, which was written a long time ago. There is one point that I totally disagree with what he writes over here. Let's see if I could get it fast, and if not, it's Hashgacha Pratis that I shouldn't talk about it. But here he says, Nira ka Rambam ras atzmai kechosem tkufas ha'ga'onis l'daitoi mahava perik azman sheben v'shas seif ha'ira, and you're going to see about that. It's fascinating. So what does it mean that he was Messiah? Like you finish the Tkufa of the Mishnah, you finish the Tkufa of the Gemara, and basically after you finish the Tkufa of the Gemara, you can't really argue on what it says in the Gemara. So when the Rambam is writing Mishnah Torah, he's saying, I am Messiah the Tkufa, and I'm telling you what the halach is. You're going to need to know the halacha when you come up to different situations. For that, havayis ta'abaya v'rava. Learn it, understand the process, and then continue with this. He also brings down over here, and the Maratz has it, the same thing. So you have a Talmud that came over Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. He's the Talmud that the Rambam wrote Mer Nevuchim for. Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. So he moved to a different place. I think it was in Ramtsova in Aleppo. So he's asking the Rambam, what should he learn? So he says to him, you know what? He says to him, number one, he tells him that he's describing a Mishnah Torah, and he says to him, nowadays people don't appreciate Mishnah Torah. Ulam la'asilavai, when the kina, when the jealousy is removed, yistapku kol bnei Yisrael boy levadai v'lo yukaitzvim al kol sefer halacha milvadai b'li safek. So the Rambam tells him his prediction that right now people are really upset with what I wrote about Mishnah Torah. That's nowadays. What's going to be in the future? People will be using, when it comes to halacha, they're going to use only Mishnah Torah itself. So another point is that he writes a letter to him. He's asking him what should he be learning. So he says to him, learn Mishnah Torah. And when you see that there's, if you see, learn Mishnah Torah and learn the Rif. When you see that there's a conflict between Mishnah Torah and the Rif, then you should go into the Gemara. But how many times is there a conflict? Hardly any times. So that's what he's saying. This was the Rambam's curriculum. Getting back to Maratz, and the Maratz says, well, everyone knows that you have to have some history. So you're not going to have much history from Mishnah Torah. So how are you going to have history if you're not learning Gemara? Once again, it's the same answer. Rambam's not saying not to learn Gemara, but look at the Gemara and learn it the way that the Rambam wanted us to learn Gemara. I think I have enough. I think you got the idea. You have access to this Tiferes L'Moshe. This is the beauty for Moshe, meaning Moshe the Rambam, Moshe ad Moshe, Loi Kam K'Moshe. Now, briefly, we did do this beforehand, but you have on page 410 of the Sefer that somebody during the time of the Rambam, they came along and said that had a complaint that you're not writing Mekairis, you're not writing any sources over here. So you have this whole story. We did review the story at a different time. So basically the Rambam concluded and he said, Valzen nichamti, I did regret that I didn't write sources, but he says, I do have in mind I'm going to write a sefer, sources. V'yezeh sefer b'fnei atzmai she'i afsher lasei zeh begufa shel chibur k'may shamarti lecha. Okay, so he says, I do plan to do it. Number one, the Rambam never did it. He never did it. Number two, you have to realize Reb Pinchas Hadayan, he came from Ashkenaz. So he's answering him, and he's answering him according to his logic. In other words, if I come along and tell somebody in 2 minutes what I think, they're going to laugh me off. So they have to, so he says, V'chianitzi visi, did I say to burn the Seforim? He's not writing this in a sefer. He's speaking to him to placate him. Now he writes here that I do plan to do it in another sefer, to write the Mekairis. Number one, why doesn't he have to be a separate sefer? Why couldn't he write it within the Mishnah Torah itself? Well, maybe Bashkafa Rishona because he already wrote Mishnah Torah, but why is he stressing it that he's going to write these Mekairis in a different sefer? That it's impossible, it's impossible, like I said, to write to you She'i efsher lasi ze begufer shel chibur k'maisha amarti lecha. Why is it e efsher? The answer is because that will abolish everything that the Rambam stood for. He wanted to say for no Mekairis, for a reason. He didn't want you to get back into the Gemara. He wanted to have the chasima of the time of the Ga'onim. He wanted to be the one to be chaysim. If he's going to write Mekairis, then it's going to schlep you back into the Gemara. And how come the Rambam never did it? Like I said before, whenever the Rambam wanted to do, he could have done it, because it wasn't important to him. That would have abolished everything that he stood for. And in conclusion, let's go to the Rambam. And I'm sure I did forget a couple things. Oh, let me also say another point. The other point is, I think a very, very serious point, is the Rambam, I don't know how many people know, also wrote Shailas Achuvas. He also wrote Responsa. But if you look into the Shailas Achuvas, you'll be disappointed. Somebody asks a question, and the Rambam answers the question, because of Moshe, and that's it. It says, Chacham Mahu Aimer. So the vart is, I think the Frierdiker Rebbe, Chacham Mahu Aimer. What the Chacham is, that's what he says. So that's the same thing regarding the Rambam. Look at the life of the Rambam. Look what the Rambam's holistic. Look at the Rambam as a whole. Chacham Mahu Aimer. When it comes to Shailas Uchuvas, even with Lamdanim, he doesn't go into the Havayas, the Abaya Verava. You won't find it there. The Shailas Uchuvas are there. It's out there. Go into Hebrew books. You'll find it. So that is Chacham Mahu Aimer, is what he writes. Another point is that the Rambam writes in one of his Igris, he says, a person has to think 1,000 times before he puts something on a paper. So when the Rambam is writing in his introduction those words which had a major impact, believe me, he didn't think about it 1,000 times. He thought about it 10,000 times. These very, very important words. Lefika karasi sheim chibur zeh mishnah Torah, lefisha adam kair b'Torah shebiksav tchila, v'achar kach kair b'zev yodeh mimenu Torah shabal peh kula ve'ena tzarich likra sefer achar beineim. He thought about it. He thought about it carefully. That letter that he wrote to Pinchas Hadayin, that was one specific thing to one individual in order to placate him. Let me tell you one other point I just remembered. The holistic approach. At one point in the Tafshin Mems in the 1980s, the Rebbe said, Chas v'sholom zu spalten the Rambam of Tzvei mention. What people meaning, Chas v'sholom, that you should split the Rambam into two people. Well, you have the Rambam of Mishnah Torah, and then you have the Rambam of Moreh Nevuchim. Usually what people do is when people have complaints about what it says in Moreh Nevuchim, they say, well, that's the Rambam of Moreh Nevuchim. He was a different person. You have the Rambam of Mishnah Torah. So that's really what people try to do when they're looking at the words of the Rambam and he says it. They try to get out of it somehow by saying, well, that's really not what the Rambam wrote. That's not what the Rambam meant. Well, the Rambam wrote that it's davar katan. He really didn't mean that it's a davar katan, like we said from the Ran. Halavai, that he didn't even say these words. When the Rambam wrote Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, he really didn't mean this heading over there. It's, the first 4 prakim are really not Torah, and all these different things. Chas v'shalom to say these things. In conclusion, finally, the Rambam begins, Yesoid ha-yesoides v'amud ha-chochmas leida sheyesham matzui rishain. This is the foundation. And he's telling us at the very onset, what is important for a person to do to know about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The question was that we had at the beginning, so what is a person supposed to do with his time? The answer to the question is, go through my Mishnah Torah. That will free you up from the Shakla V'Tarya of the Gemara. That will free up your time. Go through everything that I'm writing in Hilchos Deis and Hilchos Yisaya. You're going to get a good foundation of everything, but you don't need everything surrounding it. You don't need that because they're going to schlep you back into the Gemara. So what are you going to spend your time with? Let's look. Yesod Yesodis. After you finish that, you have plenty of time in order to spend learning about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if you do that, you're going to finally come to the ultimate. And what's that going to be? The very end. Ulefikach Yisrael Chachamim Gedolim v'yodim dvar mastum v'yasigo das boiram kefi koyach ha'adam. That's the ultimate goal. Shenemar ki mola ha'aretz deyas Hashem kamayim layam mechasim. If you have any arguments, I'd like you to disagree with me. info@shazak.com. And please go on the website for the material. Have a good day. V'ten l'chacham v'yechkam oid.